Welcome back to the One Family Podcast, where we encourage and equip families for the marriage and parenting journey. Each week, we share practical insights and real-life encouragement to help you strengthen relationships, navigate challenges with confidence, and build a home environment where love and connection thrive. One of the many questions we get from parents every year is, how do I get my child, or even teenager, to stop whining and throwing a temper tantrum? As we head into summer, these troublesome behaviors tend to ramp up, and many parents notice more emotional outbursts, more complaining, more frustration, and more battles at home. So today we have 3 areas we'll focus on: why kids whine and throw tantrums, what may actually be fueling the behavior, and what are some practical ways to respond that bring more peace and emotional health into your home. But before we dig into our topic, we wanted to mention briefly that we will be speaking at 3 homeschool conferences this summer: the Texas Homeschool Convention in Woodlands, Texas, May 28th through the 30th, the California Parenting and Homeschool Convention in Downey, California, July 10th through the 11th, and the Arizona Home Education Convention in Phoenix, Arizona, July 17th through 18th. You can find more information about these conferences on our events page of our website, onefamilyhwl.org/events. We'd love the opportunity to meet you in person, so we hope to see you there.
Sometimes when we hear the phrase temper tantrum, we immediately picture a screaming 3-year-old lying on the floor, kicking and crying. But tantrums evolve with age. A toddler may scream and cry. A 10-year-old may slam doors and stomp up the stairs. A teenager may roll their eyes, argue endlessly, or shut down emotionally. These are different expressions, but they are all the same heart issue. It usually begins with common phrases like, "You never let me do anything. That's not fair. Everybody else gets to. Why do I have to do it now? My friends' parents let them. I'm bored." This is especially common as the excitement of summer begins to wear off. And then, like pairing wine with a meal, physical expressions are added for extra attention and emphasis: crying, yelling, door slamming, eye rolling, throwing objects, heavy sighs, responses with sarcastic tones. The reality is this: whining and tantrums are usually due to being overwhelmed and emotionally dysregulated. They are attempts to gain control, avoid discomfort, or pressure parents into changing their minds. And here's the important truth we learned as parents. With toddlers, it's typically an overwhelming situation that can trigger whining or a tantrum. But as kids get older, it's more about wanting to control an outcome or circumstance. Yet in both cases, toddlers, children, and teens continue behaviors that work. If whining changes the outcome, they'll keep whining. If tantrums eventually wear mom and dad down, the tantrums continue. This doesn't make our child bad, it just makes them human. Children are constantly learning what gets results, what gets attention, what changes mom or dad's answer or response. And if we aren't careful, we can accidentally train our children to believe emotional escalation is an effective communication strategy.
It's important to remember that whining and temper tantrums are really about communication, emotional regulation, and character development. As moms and dads, we aren't just trying to stop annoying behavior. We're helping our children to learn self-regulation, self-control, respect, emotional awareness, delayed gratification and patience, healthy communication, and problem solving. These are life skills that need to be cultivated because one day your child will have a spouse, coworkers, friendships, authority figures, stressful situations, and disappointments. How they handle frustrations matter. Teaching them how to respond appropriately when they don't get their way is one of the most important lessons they can learn. Because life is full of no's. Life is full of disappointment and unmet expectations. Emotionally healthy adults learn, I can feel upset without becoming disrespectful. And that lesson starts at home. Parents should remember this too. Anger itself is not the problem. Frustration is not the problem. Being disappointed is not sinful. It's what we do with those emotions that matters. Our goal is not emotionally silent children. Our goal is emotionally healthy children.
So, what then are some practical ways to handle whining and tantrums while bringing more peace and emotional health into your home? One of the most helpful practices we implemented with our boys was teaching them how to recognize what they were feeling and how to use words and express themselves appropriately. We wanted them to know you're allowed to feel upset and you're allowed to disagree, but you're not allowed to communicate disrespectfully. That distinction matters. Many children, and honestly many adults, have never learned how to express frustration calmly and respectfully. So instead, emotions explode. When our boys were younger and their emotions escalated, we often removed them from the situation just temporarily. Sometimes that meant going to their room, sometimes sitting in the car if we were out in public, sometimes just creating space for them to calm down. And during that process, we would say, think about how you want to express yourself better. Use your words. You may join us, or let's talk about this when you can communicate respectfully. This teaches them to pause before reacting and think before speaking. Teaches them to regulate their emotions and choose their words carefully. Again, these are critical life skills. Keep in mind that conflict resolution is way more important than any immediate response or avoiding conflict altogether. That's often why the healthiest thing is to allow a child some time to calm down before they continue the conversation. When we get upset or emotionally dysregulated, it can take at least 30 minutes for the effects of cortisol to dissipate in our nervous systems. Even mom and dads need that space sometimes. Another thing to remember is not to shame emotions. Rather, you want to help guide their emotions with statements like, you shouldn't feel that way, you need to stop crying, you're overreacting, you're creating more of a problem. These things don't help. Instead, guide them with these types of statements. I understand you're disappointed. I know you're frustrated. Let's talk when you can speak respectfully. That communicates empathy without surrendering your parental authority while acknowledging their emotions at the same time. Eventually, your child will learn, I can express emotions appropriately without losing control.
The next practical thing we focused on was consistency. And this may be the hardest part of parenting tantrums and whining. That's because whining and tantrums are exhausting and draining. Children seem to know exactly when parents are tired, distracted, embarrassed, or worn down. That's why inconsistency actually strengthens the behavior we don't want. Think about this. If a child asks 10 times and finally gets a yes, what did they learn? They learned that persistence through whining works. These intermittent rewards are powerful. It's the same principle casinos use with slot machines. You keep pulling because eventually you might win. Children do the same thing emotionally. If I push long enough, mom and dad may cave. This is why parental unity matters so much. Mom and dad must be consistent and on the same page. In fact, we discussed this in more detail in our second podcast on parenting styles if you wish to dig a little deeper. But consider this. If one person says no while the other later gives in, children quickly learn where the cracks are. The truth is, children actually feel safer and more secure when boundaries are consistent, even if they protest those boundaries. One of the greatest gifts parents can provide is emotional stability, healthy expectations, and boundaries. Not mood-based parenting, not exhaustion-based parenting or guilt-based parenting, but consistent, unified leadership.
The third area we concentrated our efforts on was encouraging the right behavior. One mistake many parents make is only talking about behavior when something's going wrong. But encouragement is really one of the most powerful tools for shaping behavior. We need to catch our child doing something right and offer genuine praise. We need to take notice of respectful communication and acknowledge it in the moment. We affirm self-control and celebrate their growth and maturity when we do that. For example, thank you for handling that disappointment so well. I appreciated your attitude earlier. I know you didn't like my answer, but you responded respectfully, and I really appreciate that. That kind of reinforcement matters. As we mentioned, children often repeat behaviors that receive meaningful attention, wanted and unwanted. Also consider that encouragement from mom and dad is building their identity. A child begins to think, I'm someone who handles my frustration well. I'm growing in maturity. I can communicate respectfully and show self-control. That identity becomes powerful motivation, which is a big difference maker. Finally, don't forget to explain the why behind decisions whenever appropriate. Children don't always need lengthy explanations in the moment of conflict, though. But during calm moments of non-conflict, it's healthy to discuss and reinforce your family values, safety concerns, your moral convictions, and practical reasoning. When children understand that decisions are thoughtful, not random or emotionally based, it builds trust and respect even when they disagree with us.
If you're currently in a season with whining, arguing, or emotional outbursts, don't lose heart. This is very common, and understand that change takes time. Children are learning emotional skills gradually over many years. The goal is progress, not perfection. What matters most is that parents remain intentional, united, calm, and consistent. In our own family, we made the decision early on that whining and tantrums would not become the normal communication culture of our home. Not because we expected perfect children, but because we wanted to teach healthy communication, respect, and self-control. And over time, with consistency and encouragement, those behaviors became very short-lived. So if you're in the middle of this battle right now, stay steady. Your calm consistency today is helping shape your child's emotional health for the future and bring harmony to your home. Thanks for joining us today on the One Family Podcast. We hope this conversation encouraged you and gave you practical tools you can apply as we head into summer. If this episode was helpful, be sure to share it with another parent who may need the encouragement right now. And remember, you do not have to parent perfectly to parent purposefully. We'll see you next time.